Rich Dad, Poor Dad: What the Rich Teach Their Kids About Money That the Poor and Middle Class Do Not. By Robert T. Kiyosaki. Today's book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a classic personal finance book. Regardless of whether you usually pay attention to financial management, you've probably heard of this book. Since its publication in 2000, it stayed at the top of the national book charts for 18 consecutive months and rarely dropped out of the top 10 afterwards. The cover of the book is purple, and back then, if you frequented libraries, you would see the recommendation shelves dominated by this purple cover. It was a legendary bestseller, holding a place on the New York Times bestseller list and achieving cumulative sales of nearly 30 million copies in 109 countries. It has practically changed a generation's view on financial management. Why is this book so popular? Firstly, it's very well written. Most financial books are full of complex numbers and various charts, which can be somewhat daunting. This book, however, is very easy to understand, making it an introductory financial book that is clear and straightforward, aimed at changing people's commonly held misconceptions about financial management. Another crucial reason for its popularity is the dramatic way it's written, based on the author's personal experiences. The book presents two completely different perspectives clashing, much like a movie where the protagonist and antagonist are in conflict, and gradually, the protagonist prevails. It's a compelling read, and very few people have such experiences. The author of the book is Robert Kiyosaki. He was born into an ordinary middle-class family in America, attended regular schools, and grew up in the traditional education system. But unlike others, he had two fathers. One was his biological father, a highly educated official in the education department, extremely smart, holding a PhD, and having studied at Stanford and the University of Chicago. He was seen as a high-level intellectual with a stable job, a steady salary, living a life many would envy. The other father was his friend's father, a high school dropout who became a businessman with excellent financial skills. Because Robert often hung out with his friend's father treated him like his own son. While teaching his own son, he also imparted his wisdom to Robert. As Robert absorbed the different values from these two fathers, he noticed a stark contrast in their views on the same issues, particularly on money and values. Although his biological father seemed to live a good life in others' eyes, Robert knew his father constantly worried about money, was always busy with bills, sometimes facing bankruptcy, and never managed to improve his financial situation. In contrast, the businessman father had plenty of time for his family and accumulated millions in wealth, being one of the richest men in Chicago. Faced with this reality, Robert had to make a choice and decided to adopt the businessman father's values. As a result, years later, he became very wealthy himself, achieving financial freedom and avoiding a life of financial struggles like his biological father. What were the values of the rich dad that changed Robert's fate? Let's discuss the differences in values between the two dads and the two lessons the rich dad taught Robert. First, let's talk about the differences in values between Robert's two dads. Both were very smart and hardworking, but their main difference was their attitude toward money. His biological father, the educated PhD, always said, "Greed is the root of all evil. People should know how to restrain themselves and not be obsessed with money." Meanwhile, the businessman father said, "Poverty is the root of all evil. Poverty amplifies people's negative traits and erodes their positive traits. Conversely, having money helps more people and eliminates evil in the world." When the two fathers passed away, the biological father left behind a pile of bills, while the businessman father left millions for charity and his son's inheritance, ensuring the continuation of his business and wealth creation. When encountering something expensive, his biological father would say, "I can't afford this," and stop thinking about it, similar to how many people view real estate in major cities. The businessman father forbade such statements and insisted on thinking, "How can I afford this?" This difference in mindset, one avoiding the problem, the other constantly seeking solutions, meant the biological father's financial intelligence stagnated, while the businessman father's financial intelligence grew. The biological father complained about taxes, saying, "The government is too greedy, taking a third of our income." The businessman father accepted taxes as a necessity for a fair market, seeing them as tools to reward the diligent and penalize the lazy. The biological father advised, study hard so you can find a good job, driven by fear of failure, while the businessman father said, study hard so you can start your own company and create jobs for others, driven by the desire to help more people. The biological father avoided discussing money at the dinner table, while the businessman father constantly discussed business. The biological father was cautious with money, while the businessman father embraced risk management and investment. The biological father depended on government retirement plans, while the businessman father believed in personal financial responsibility and continuous learning. The biological father taught how to create impressive resumes, while the businessman father taught how to write business and financial plans. Both fathers experienced bankruptcy, but the biological father saw it as the end of his financial aspirations, while the businessman father viewed it as temporary, confident in his financial knowledge and ability to rebuild wealth quickly. These differences highlight the importance of attitudes toward money. One avoided and despised money, leading to financial struggles, while the other pursued and respected money, resulting in continuous wealth accumulation. This difference in mindset is crucial, as disdain for money often hinders financial success. This prevalent disdain for money is due to a lack of financial education. Highly educated individuals, like Robert's biological father and the English literature Ph.D. woman he encountered, often resist the idea of making money, viewing it as beneath them. This attitude is not taught in schools, leading to financial struggles despite high intelligence and education. Financial intelligence is critical, as it determines financial freedom and control over one's life. Schools may not teach it, but cultivating financial intelligence is essential for achieving financial stability and independence. The earlier one develops this awareness, the sooner one can achieve financial freedom and control over their life. So, how exactly do you improve your financial IQ? What did Robert's entrepreneur father teach him? It boils down to two key principles. First principle: the rich don't work for money. The rich don't trade their time and labor for small amounts of money. That's what poor people do. The rich focus their energy on building their own businesses and are very protective of their time and effort. Even if they do work, it's temporary and done more for personal growth and happiness rather than immediate survival needs. Robert's entrepreneur father shared an example involving a rat race. He explained that most people, despite having different personal circumstances, exhibit remarkably similar patterns, particularly the characteristics of the middle class. For instance, they are told from a young age to study hard to get a good job. They get a stable job, get married, and have kids. These individuals might be doctors or lawyers with decent incomes, but their wages barely cover their mortgage and children's education expenses. To improve their lifestyle, they work even harder, earn more, but also increase their expenses, taxes, credit card debt, and loans. They become more entrenched in a cycle of working harder to pay off more bills. This cycle is akin to a rat running on a wheel, exerting great effort but not getting anywhere. To break free from this rat race, you need to confront your fears and desires head-on and not be swayed by small sums of money. Most people look for jobs out of fear of not being able to pay bills, fear of being fired, fear of not having enough money, fear of starting over. Many are slaves to money. To eliminate these fears, they often sell their labor cheaply, even though many create far more value than they're paid for. To inoculate Robert and his friend against these fears and desires early on, his entrepreneur father put them through a unique training. Initially, he paid them a small wage for their work. The kids were happy, earning 1 cent per hour. After some time, his father told them, if you want to keep earning $1 per hour, that's fine, but you won't learn any real skills that way. Do you want to learn how to make big money? The kids enthusiastically said yes. His father replied, if you want to learn, you'll have to work for free from now on. You won't get a single cent from me. But you can choose any job, each corresponding to a skill that can combine into a career. First, you need to determine your career goal. The boys discussed and decided they wanted to open a comic book rental store. After setting this goal, they started learning from selling sodas. During this time, their father would tempt them with paid tasks, like offering $1 per hour to mow the neighbor's lawn. The boys remained silent. When the offer increased to $2, they still said nothing. Finally, when it reached $5, Robert couldn't resist and said, "We still want to run our comic book shop." Seeing they had resisted the temptation, their father considered the lesson successful. Robert recalls that after this experience, no matter how much others offered him for a job, he only focused on whether he could learn the skills he needed for his true goals. Learning and growth became his primary motivation for working, setting him apart from those driven by fear and desire. This was the first lesson from his entrepreneur father: always run towards your own growth, not like the rat running in circles in a cage. Second principle: know the difference between assets and liabilities. You might think this is straightforward, but most people can't distinguish between assets and liabilities. For instance, you might consider your car an asset, but it's not. It's a liability because it continuously costs money to maintain. The second lesson Robert learned from his rich dad was the only rule in personal finance: understand the difference between assets and liabilities, and keep acquiring assets. This principle sounds simple but is absent from the thinking of many people. Most people's mindset is to earn more and spend more, buying liabilities that eventually drag down their financial health. For instance, when someone unexpectedly comes into a large sum of money, like winning a lottery or receiving an inheritance, they might initially live lavishly. But if they have a spending mindset without an investment mindset, they quickly revert to their previous financial state, often worse. This is the classic poor mindset: no matter how much they earn, they remain poor in essence. How do the rich consume? They never use money that should be buying assets to purchase liabilities. If they want to improve their lifestyle and buy luxury items, they use the money generated from their assets. In other words, they first build a money-generating machine before considering consumption. When it comes to buying assets, what qualifies as an asset? Properties, stocks, funds, bonds, all these count. By staying attuned to the market, you'll discover many valuable opportunities. Poor people often don't buy assets because they're either too lazy to seek information or think their principal amount is too small to make a difference. They don't see the point in investing. This mindset is why the poor remain poor. The rich treat every dollar like a soldier, building their own army to generate income, always working for them. The poor can't endure the building process and can't resist their consumption desires, spending whatever they earn. So, the second lesson Robert learned was to differentiate between liabilities and assets, control his spending impulses, and accumulate assets until they generate their own money. This is the correct approach to personal finance.